Absolutely. So the
Okay.
opposite of self-love is working, right?
Yes, right. So we definitely want to work on 8 ways to increase your vulnerability versus 8 ways to increase your emotional resiliency when we have that numbness. Okay. Cool.
Understood.
Awesome. Let's hear from one other person before we get started. Thank you for being so brave, Anne. I love, love, love talking to you guys. So we have Crystal, Lori, we have Shannon, Shirley, Steve, Meg. Who would like to share maybe why they're here today or have a question about emotional resiliency before we even get started? Shannon's like, don't pick me, don't pick me. I love the face. I love it. Well, I'm going to randomly select somebody. Well, Lori R., I know who you are, so I'm unmuting you. Hi, Lori.
Hi, hold on one second.
Are you in a place that you can't talk?
In just a second, I will be able to.
Awesome. For those of you who don't know, this is Lori. She's one of my favorite gal pals. Known her for years. Good to see you on here.
Good to be here. I'm here to, when life does knock me down, to be able to get up and realize that other people deal with stuff on a day-to-day basis also, and that it's not just me.
Oh, I love that. So it's not personal, right? So that ability to learn that this is not personal. This is not about me when people do throw, when they're throwing stones. Because we deal with a level of mindlessness in our society. Would you agree to that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that mindlessness doesn't mean that those people are cruel or vicious or malicious. It means that a lot of times people just don't have the skill set or the training to understand the impact of what they say or what they do or how they say it or how they do. And many people are constantly acting from that space or that state of being of survival. Right? They're trying to protect themselves, protect their own for whatever reason. And what ends up happening, though, is that they mindlessly or unintentionally, and sometimes it is intentionally, will throw stones or sticks or weapons that can really knock us down. And so emotional resiliency, I love what Lori's saying here, is like where she's like, well, I want to learn to really not take this so personal. Is to depersonalize this, to recognize that this has nothing to do with me. And when we can begin to step into that space, and we can step into that state, we really can begin to have compassion and understanding when other people don't share the same. And there's a huge gift in that. So Lori, what would, if you could really step into that, like what would that do for you?
I think I wouldn't dwell on things as much, the whatever the issue was, and I would be able to move on to better things.
Yeah. So when you say dwell, is your mind kind of like obsessing the shoulda, coulda, woulda,
yes.
Anybody else got that? Okay. So when we have those experiences where, especially if there's just, you feel ick, like you feel slimed after connecting with someone, you feel, maybe hurt or hindered after dealing with somebody, and you come up with like that epic comeback in your head, right? You come up with like 6 or 7 different things that you should have said that could have used your voice better or to stand up for it more. And really that's your mind's way of trying to learn from that experience. So what I would really emphasize, Lori, is that when your mind starts to do that, and this is for anyone else who goes into the shoulda, coulda, woulda cycle, shoulda, coulda, woulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda, choo-choo, right? When you board that train, what we want to do is recognize, okay, there's an opportunity for me to learn something here. There's an opportunity to learn. And when you can pause in that moment and say, okay, all right, my mind's obsessing over this because I might have not done something that I desired or that was in alignment with my higher self. What was it? And what can I do next time? And when you begin to start rationalizing or reasoning with yourself, you'll step off the shoulda, coulda, woulda train, and you'll start to move into the opportunity train. And on the opportunity train is where you can start to connect with the lessons of how you could do that different and maybe what you need emotionally or mentally to do that differently. Because many cases that shoulda, coulda, woulda, we don't realize that there's a sense maybe we need of safety. Maybe our brains shut down because many people under pressure or during conflict are going to tune out. They'll completely shut themselves down and then tune out. Well, a lot of that happens because we're not able to connect to the reasonings. And when we can really connect with what we need, like maybe we just needed to overcome the fear of rejection or overcome the fear of abandonment in that moment. And you can ask yourself, what do I need to overcome that? What do I need? And maybe you just need to trust that, that it'll work out, or that the chips will fall as they may, or that this is happening for not just your highest good, but for the highest good of all people involved. But when you're not playing out full out, you're not helping anyone.
Yes.
So next time you're on the shoulda, coulda, woulda, ask yourself, what do I need to learn? Okay. What do I need to learn? Awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks for being brave. I know I totally called you out, so I appreciate that.
I was actually thinking about saying something, but I was at my desk, so I needed to step out for a moment. So
wonderful.
Perfect.
All right. Well, I'm going to mute you just like everyone else. Okay. So let's get into this, guys. I want to leave this open afterwards. So if you're taking notes, you're going to want to follow along. We're going to talk about the 8 kind of tips or strategies to becoming more emotionally resilient. So I'm going to share this with you guys here in just a moment. So before we get into that, though, I really want to make sure that we understand what emotional resiliency is. Now, I loved that Anne was sharing that she has the opposite extreme of this, where it's like that I'm so resilient that I'm not emotional. Right? Like I have that ability to survive and to bounce back and to go. So that's the opposite extreme, right? So if you can imagine, there's like 2 extremes. There's like the constructive extreme and destructive extreme. Well, whatever, making up my own words today. There's opposite ends of this spectrum. And when we begin to try to balance out towards the middle. Now, let me clarify balance for a moment. I hear all the time in the personal development industry about the need to be in balance, right? Like where you just reach this specific point in your life where everything is just magically balanced and you're like, woo, my life is great. Now, don't get me wrong. You're going to have moments of this, especially when you're constantly striving for that. And you can have these moments that just feel like utopia. Like you're just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then it's short-lived. And then we get back into this place of either self-deprivation or self-hatred or self-loathing or whatever it is because we're not in that space. Well, when we need to change and refine our mindset around what balance is and recognize that you have moments of that, but your overall objective or your goal isn't to balance, it's to always be balancing. Okay, there's a big difference here that you always want to be balancing. What I mean by that is that life doesn't just exist in a straight line. You're not going to wake up every day and just know exactly what to do, how to do it, where to do it, on and on. You have so many variables that affect our day-to-day life. We have so many outside stimulants, outside experiences, outside people that participate in our day-to-day life. And because we can't control them, because we can't control, situations, we can't control the other cars on the road, we can't control our colleagues, we can't control a lot of things. Because we can't control that, life isn't going to just operate in this linear space. It's going to ebb and it's going to flow, which means that you're going to have moments of extreme balance and extreme out of balance and extreme balance and extreme out of balance. A good example of that for me is in just the last 3 weeks. So I have 5 coaches that work with me, and I have an executive coordinator, and I have video guy. I have a handful of people that work on my team. And all at once, they all were taken out in the same time frame, meaning that they all had emergencies, they all had something going on or on vacation or something in their personal lives. And then at the same time, I had a family emergency. So all at the same time, all of these things were chaotically happening, and I had to step up in my business to the nth degree. Now, when I say step up, I mean like I had to own a lot and working like from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. every single day, including weekends. Now, do you think that I got a little burnout and tired? Heck yeah. And yesterday was like my first day off, and I just said, I'm out. And I went down to San Diego for the day and had lunch with my friends. I was like, I'm done. I don't want to hang out with anybody else today. And it was beautiful. But what I also realized is that, so if this is my balance line, I was way over here. I was way over to the opposite side. Now, the reason why I also knew that this was temporary. Now, if I stay in that, I'm going to go into overwhelm and burnout, overwhelm and burnout, overwhelm and burnout. If I'm on the opposite extreme where I'm constantly taking days off, I'm always relaxing, my life is super good, I'm going to be in the other extreme where my finances are going to suffer, or, my getting things done is going to suffer, my clientele is going to suffer, my household's going to suffer. So we have to recognize that we can be in either extreme where we're just not doing or doing. And the goal is to just recognize that when we're out of alignment and be aiming back towards the center, and then just constantly kind of moving like a snake back and forth, ebb and flow between balance, imbalance, and balance. Now this is the same that you can really think about within your fitness, within your diet, within your finances. There's so many different aspects of this. Now, the reason why I tell you this is because when it comes to emotional resiliency, there is going to be this balancing act that we're going to want to be ebbing and snaking, ebb and flow through. What I mean by that is that you're going to get knocked down sometimes by life, and we kind of have to put on our resiliency, our tougher skin to stand up and to be strong. But then we also have to recognize that when we're over in the I'm too strong, and have to ebb back the other direction where we can be introducing more vulnerability. Now, I forgot to start recording this until a little bit later on, and that was the first person we were talking to was that need to move towards vulnerability. So if you are one of those people that are overly resilient, meaning that you just don't let anything affect you, well, instead of looking at these 8 ways to increase your emotional resiliency, we need to look at 8 ways that you can increase your vulnerability. So a little bit different, but it's just really want you to kind of be thinking about your mind of where you need to be balancing yourself back out in between this. Because life's going to throw you curveballs, and it's how you respond to it. There's an old saying that life is 90%, 10% what happens and 90% of how you respond to things. Life is 10% of what happens and 90% of how you respond to things. When things happen, do you allow it to emotionally sabotage you? Do you stop doing work? Do you curl into bed? Do you hide? Do you avoid? Are you passive aggressive? Are you resentful? Are you spiteful? Like, how do you respond to that? And is the response in alignment with your higher self? If the answer is heck no, then you need to be balancing back. We need to be ebbing back in the other direction and figuring out where we can balance this out. So if we're in spite, maybe the other extreme is compassion. And if you're in all compassion all the time, then maybe the other extreme needs to be boundaries, right? So maybe we got to ebb and flow between these two things where we're not letting people take advantage of us, but we're also not so closed off that we're like beating everybody up around us. We want to figure out where's the balancing line between having compassion, having resiliency, and holding people accountable. I think in the personal development space, that's one thing that's not talked about enough, is that it's okay to hold people accountable for their behaviors and actions. But how you do that is what's important. How do you hold people responsible? Do you stop talking to them? Are you aggressive to them? Are you yelling? Are you overly assertive in an aggressive way? Are you punishing them? Right? Like if that's you, then maybe there's going to be some room to kind of ebb back into the other direction where we can find a way to hold people accountable that's maybe loving, kind, and respectful. Now, I believe this month we've already talked about boundaries. If you guys haven't watched that video, I'm going to recommend that you go back and watch that one. I believe it was last week, where I'm kind of giving you some different strategies about clear, kind, unemotional request versus a command. Now, if that's a little bit like, wait, what did she say? Just watch the other video. You're going to get that more than from me just being here. So I want to make sure to emphasize that it's uploaded on my Facebook and it's uploaded on YouTube. So either one of those channels, you can get access to it. Or if you're on my emailing list, it did get sent out last week as well. So check your inbox. All right. Let's dive into some 8 ways to increase your emotional resiliency. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to assume that many of you are going to need to enhance your emotional resiliency, that maybe we are too emotionally affected by life. And again, resiliency is just your ability to bounce back. One of my favorite quotes is, and forgive me, I can't think off the top of my head who said this, but he said that success is an accumulation of millions of failures with minor breakthroughs. And I love that. Success is an accumulation of millions of failures with some minor breakthroughs. Now, why is that so powerful? Because it's saying that we have the failures outweigh the success. Now, when we can really get in touch with this and we can apply this to all aspects of our life, whether it's your fitness, whether it's your relationships, whether it's your finances, whether it's your personal development, whether it's your business, is that success, like true success, is a combination of more failures with minor breakthroughs. Because each one of those breakthroughs leads you somewhere closer and somewhere closer. And so when we can begin to become at peace with that, we can start to embrace those failures, knowing that each no, each rejection, each mistake, each failure is leading us one step closer to a breakthrough. And as long as your attitude or your mindset is focused on what can I learn from this versus this means something about me, let me explain. What can I learn from this would be, all right, where did I go wrong and how can I be better? Versus I failed equals me being a failure. When we accumulate our idea of failure or mistakes as part of our identity, this is where your emotional resiliency is very weak. Okay? When you don't have the ability to separate these mistakes from your identity, then it's going to be very, very crippling. So we have to recognize that the things that happen to us aren't about us. Even if it's something someone else did to you, just like what we were saying there with Lori earlier on the call. It's that people, that we deal with a lot of ignorance, not in a way of saying, that I'm judging people, but meaning that there's just a lack of awareness and emotional responsibility that still is very prevalent in our society. And a part of that is because there hasn't been any standard of training to help people be able to overcome those things, to cope with their emotions, to learn how to navigate these things where they're not knocking us out. All right, so let me dive in to these 8 ways that we can increase our emotional resiliency. So the first one is, I love this, and this kind of goes in alignment with what I was saying earlier with Lori, and it says, this too shall pass. You separate who you are from your suffering. So in Buddhism, they have an old saying, and you guys have probably heard me say this, and I will say it 1,000 more times probably before I die, but is that pain is inevitable. Meaning that failure is inevitable, mistakes is inevitable, rejection is inevitable, like doing something very out of alignment with your core values is inevitable. But suffering is optional. Now, suffering is that 90% of how you respond to things. Suffering is that shoulda, coulda, woulda train that you're in your head constantly thinking about all the ways that you could have done that differently, all the ways you should have done that differently, and all the ways that you didn't use your voice and how you could have been better and how you should have told them what you think. And all of that obsessing in the mind is that suffering, because it causes you emotional pain. So again, when we separate this identity, right? So separate failure from your identity, you recognize that, failing doesn't make you a failure. That failure is just a part of growing. Failure is a part of growth. And if you are choosing to grow, you're going to fail. Now, when you keep failing and you don't learn from it and you don't grow from it, now that's really the definition of suffering, because you become a hamster on a wheel where you're just like constantly getting electrocuted, but you just can't get yourself off of the wheel. Well, you're going in circles. Like, that's literally the definition of insanity. We don't want to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. We want to do something different and see if that gives us a different outcome. And when that doesn't work, we do something different and see if that gives us an outcome. And when that doesn't work, we do something different until we find a way that works. Now, did you hear how I said that? I didn't say that you try a different way and magically it's going to work. I said you're going to try a different way and it's probably still going to fail, and you try a different way again. But when you recognize that these failures will pass, these moments will pass, this embarrassment will pass, and life marches on. Omar says that the moving finger having writ moves on. Nor all thy pity nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out a single word. What he's saying here is that your history has been written. And no matter how much you cry, no matter how witty you are, no matter how strong, no matter how resilient you are, that you cannot go back and cancel even a half a moment, a half a second, or a half an hour of what has already been done. When we can recognize that our histories have been written and we can begin to move on from them, it allows you to constantly be in the state of present. Now, why this is so powerful is that when we get into that state of presence, that we can then make the most of today, so we can make sure that tomorrow is even better. But if we're living in the past, if you're living in regret, if you're living in yesterday, you're not in today. And when you're dragging yesterday and you're dragging all of these past moments and you're obsessing over that in the now, it's going to drastically reduce your emotional resiliency, because you're not able to cope with the new things that are coming at you today because you're too busy wasting all of your energy of what happened yesterday. This too shall pass means that we have to learn and grow from it. Now, again, let me emphasize that, because one of the things, I'm an emotional intelligence professor. That's what I do. I teach people how to get out of your way. I know I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning of this thing, but I am an emotional intelligence coach. So what does that mean? Is that I help you understand what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and how those feelings are drastically affecting you and the people around you. Now, why that's important is because we have to be able to separate these things that happen to us from our identities. And being emotionally intelligent allows you to do that. And the more that you become self-aware, the more that you understand your limitations, the more that you separate these failures from your identity, and the more that you begin to recognize that stuff like pain is inevitable, and we embrace our failures, the higher your emotional intelligence goes, and the more emotionally resilient you become, because no longer do these things are going to wipe you out because they're not attached to your self-worth. When your mistakes are tied to your worth, when your success is tied to your worth, you will suffer. So you can be on either end of those extremes, failure or success. If your self-worth is attached to either, you will suffer. We have to separate our self-worth and what we have, what we accomplish, what we do, what we don't do, where we fail, where we make mistakes, where we're not great, away from your identity. You are perfect, whole, and complete. You are divine essence just as you are. You fill in what that is, but you do not have to prove anything to anyone to be worthy. You just forget. So when we begin to separate these things, we recognize that life is just going to happen. These mistakes, these failures are going to pass. But as long as your mindset is focused on what you can learn and what you can grow, you'll continue to evolve so we don't get stuck in the repeat pattern. All right, let me move to the next one. Practice acceptance. I've kind of already been alluding to this one, and I absolutely love, love, love this. Somebody put something in the chat box. Oh, what do you associate self-worth with? So Thomas just asked a really great question. So I'm going to backtrack to that before I jump into number 2. I want to make sure to answer you guys this question. What do you attach your self-worth to? You get to decide that. Like, I know that I am worthy regardless of what I have, do, see, and accomplish. I know that my worth is defined just as me being a being. Right? That there's nothing that I have to have or do to know that I'm worthy. Worthiness for me, and you need to come up with your definition of worthy, but worthiness to me is something that is just all of us should have. You are a worthy being. And when you're in that space and you're in that mindset and you're in that, you will do great things into the world. Even the people who are suffering the most end up causing the most suffering in this world. I'll be honest. Okay. People who are suffering the most cause the most suffering. And a big part of that is because they don't realize that they are loved without needing someone to love them, that they're divine, perfect, and whole and complete. So worth isn't something you need to acquire. It's something that you need to be reminded of. And with this society, we've put all of our self-worth on success. Right? I mean, we deem someone as worthy who has the job, the car, the house, the kids, right? That has all of these things that we're like, oh, wow, right? And we give our power away to that person. Well, if they haven't done the work inside themselves to connect to their purpose and their worth that has nothing to do with what they have, if they go through 2009 again, right, and they lose everything, they're devastated. Their self-worth for them was dependent on what they have. And when what they have is taken from them, they're no longer worthy. This is why I say your worth cannot be attached to what you have or what you don't have. It needs to be just something grounded inside of you that is perfect. And you can make that a spiritual thing or not. You can make it a religious thing or not. How about the role is it worth definition? Thomas, I'm not sure what that one means. Like, how about the role is it worth definition? If you want to clarify that in the chat box, I'll be happy to answer that. In the meantime, though, I'm going to go on to number 2. So number 2 is practice acceptance. Oh, my role define my worth. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, now I'm going to answer that. So does my role define your worth? No, because again, your role can be changed. So if my role as a speaker, author, or coach, or my role as a mother, or my role as a wife, can all of those things be taken from me? Yes. Now, I have had a lot of mothers that I have worked through that have drastic empty nest syndrome. Once their children, they put all of their self-worth in being a mother, that when their children leave, they have no idea who they are, what they want, and they slip into a dark state of depression or a dark state of emptiness, because now what do I do with myself? Now, don't get me wrong. You can feel like a lot of pride, and you can feel really connected to something, like being a mother or a father, where, we can really truly feel that, we feel like we're doing really good, but you just don't want your self-worth to be all attached to that. Now, all of these things can contribute to your worth, but they should not define your worth. Does that make sense? So as a role, again, your role can shift and change, right? Your spouse could leave you, they could pass away. And if your self-worth is on that, you're going to feel devastated. So we want to really connect with your self-worth separate from all of these things and really connect into the divine essence of who you are. And as I mentioned, this could be, it could be a spiritual thing, a religious thing, or not. It does not need to be any of those things. For me, I definitely find, divine purpose in connecting to something much bigger than me, and recognize that I'm connected to something bigger than me, but that's personal. Okay, cool. All right, now for real, I'm moving on to number 2. All right, so let's go back here. So practice acceptance. I've been alluding to this one already, right? When I said that quote, the moving finger having writ moves on, meaning that we have to accept our mistakes. We have to accept our shortcomings. We have to accept that you will fail, that you will be betrayed, that you will be abandoned, and that should not stop you from getting back up and trying again. Now, one of the things that is my personal mantra, it is a personal mindset that absolutely serves me in every aspect of my life, is that I commit to never punishing someone new in my life for something someone else has done to me. Okay, now why is that important? Let's think about relationships. When I've been betrayed by friendships, let's say that women, I've had experiences where they abandon me, they abuse me mentally or emotionally, they're catty with me, they're really short with me. And I have this story now around what women are like, and I just met you, let's say you're a woman for the first time, and you and I are like, okay, you say I want to be my friend, and I'm going to start to withhold love from you because of what these people did. Is that fair to you? Do you deserve that? But yet we do this in relationships all the time. This is why it's so important that I accept, okay, that you are a new person. Can you potentially betray me, abandon me, hurt me? Yes. I go into it open-minded with that, but I refuse to punish you by withholding love, by not being willing to be vulnerable, by not willing to have patience because of what someone else has done to me. It's a really powerful mindset when you can wrap your head around this. And you're open-minded about it, meaning that you have to also be very open-minded, very conscious with the people that you're connecting to, with the possibility that they're going to hurt you. Now, this is, like, as I say in here, hardship is a part of life. We have to accept pain is inevitable, right? But it's our suffering. It's our carrying that story, our unwillingness to forgive, our unwillingness to move on from it that is going to drastically affect our ability to kind of bounce back. When we're still emotionally being or emotionally suffering from something that happened in the past, you're not practicing emotional resiliency. You are still holding. It's like pushing a spring down, and it's holding the spring down over here, and it's causing so much energy. Think of how much energy you waste when we don't accept and move on. Think of how much energy you waste with your thoughts, with your feelings, with your withholding, with your suppressing. There's a lot of energy, and a lot of anguish can result from that. So we want to begin to accept that pain happens. People suck. Okay, let's be real, right? That there's a lot of people in your life that are going to suck, and they're not going to deserve your love and your patience and your acceptance. And we just learn a healthy way to be able to have boundaries with them, but no longer shall you allow that to keep you stuck. We want to remove our excuses of why you're holding on to these past betrayals and hurts. Whatever the reason is of why you hold on to that is not worth it. You can find a better way. Now, maybe the way you've tried before hasn't worked, and maybe the way that you've tried before has caused you more suffering. Well, just like we said in the first one, that we need to try something different. And even trying something different might fail again, but eventually you'll find something that works. Okay? So success does not run in a straight line. I've talked about this, right? It ebbs and it flows. And I love, love, love this next slide when it visually shows you what success looks like, right? If you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, right, you get this. Or even if you've started a nonprofit, if you've started anything, you get this, right? We look at people who have success, that have all the things that we desire in their life, and we're just like, oh yeah, they must have just right to the top. Like I just met this lady yesterday, 32 years old. She's 2 years younger than me. And the things that she's accomplished in her life is mind blowing, right? And we would think because in the short time frame, like she's only been working for 11 years, right? So for the 11 years, she must have went from point A to point B and just whoosh, straight up the line, right? No, talking with her, her success was mangled all over the place. It just was much more rapid because she was much more rapid. She was relentless with what she wanted. She would go like where most people would only like maybe put out 2 or 3 applications. She put out 200 applications, and she just didn't do the minimum. She went above and beyond everything that she was doing. So her success was that messy, even though because it's such a short time frame and we're all looking at her like, what the heck, girl, like kudos to you, that we think that it must have been like this linear line. Well, life doesn't happen like that. So when we begin to recognize that life is going to throw you this, we begin to expect it, it's going to allow your resiliency to kind of shift up. See, resiliency, again, is your ability to bounce back. How quickly can you bounce back from these things? Well, the quicker you can move into acceptance that pain, betrayal, abandonment, failure, mistakes happen, the quicker that you can really come into this place of understanding around this, the faster you're going to be able to move beyond it. And the quicker you can stand back up and try again is the closer you become to that success. Powerful stuff. All right, number 3 is that realize you have a choice. I love this, okay? So this one is really an emotional intelligence master key right here, okay? That meaning that if you really are committed to being more emotionally intelligent and more emotionally resilient, is that when life knocks you down, the number one thing, the 3 words that are going to guarantee to help you get back up faster than anything else, 3 words. You ready? Write this down. It's my choice. I want you to put that on a frickin' sticky note, and I want you to have that sticky note somewhere just up in your house where you can just remind yourself that it's, I love it, Anne's like, I got this. It's my choice. I want you to write 10 of them, Anne. I want you to have 10 of these. Put everywhere, all right? Like, so you can constantly be reminded, and when you stop noticing them, change the color. Did you hear me? When you stop noticing these, maybe you do blue because that's what I'm holding right now, and you stop noticing the blue, move to yellow. And when you stop noticing the yellow, move to purple, right? And because what we got to do is continue to hijack the brain to remind yourself that it's my choice. It's my choice to feel whatever I want, to think what I want, to respond how I want about any situation. It's my choice. When I told you earlier that I choose not to punish new people in my life for the mistakes that other people have made to me, that's a choice. That is a legit choice that I make on a regular basis. Because I choose that, it allows me to have different engagements with different people. That I'm not repeating the same things because I'm not dragging my history into the new experience. So, and I love this next one. It says, you can have fear or you can have faith, but you can't have both. I love that. You can't have fear, or you can't have fear and faith. They both can exist because one is predicting the worst case scenario, whereas the other is more optimistic that it's all going to work out. Faith is just optimism. That's really a lot of what faith is having faith that it's going to work, having faith that you're going to be able to bounce back from this, and trusting that the universe is providing for you, that God is providing for you, that life is providing for you, whatever it is that your spouse is providing for you, having faith, okay? Faith that it's going to work. And fear and faith are the same energy. It's just one is focusing on a negative experience and one is focused on a positive. When you realize that it's your choice to have either one, you can begin to take back your power. Do you guys get that? You can take back your power. And the ability, do you think fear is going to allow you to step back and stand back up? No, fear is going to keep you stuck. It's going to keep you small. It's going to keep you playing it safe because it's a survival tactic. But when we have faith, we're going to stand back up and say, yep, I'm going to choose to learn from this. Did you hear the C word again? I'm going to choose to learn from this. I'm going to choose to grow from this. I'm going to choose to evolve from this. I choose. So this is just a powerful, powerful one. I'm going to go to number 4. Okay. Number 4 is to enhance your emotional resiliency is to recognize the power of your perception. So perception is a fickle little thing. It's a very tricky little thing here, guys. I saw another question in the chat box. There's 2 of it. I'll get to you guys in just a second. So power of perception is such a crazy little thing here. Now, if you guys don't understand perception, I want you to go onto my YouTube channel and check out the video I did on perception. Okay, it's going to give you just some really good facts, but I'm going to kind of do an overview of this really quick. But when it comes to a resiliency, for your ability to bounce back on something is that you have to recognize that your perception and how you see things, how you perceive, how you interpret situations is distorted by our past experiences. So how we're seeing things is distorted by our past experiences. When you recognize that your perception has that ability, you can then begin to negotiate with your perception. Your perception can be influenced with your reason. Your perception can be influenced with your reason. So we want to begin to challenge your initial thoughts and feelings. That as these thoughts and feelings that come up that totally usually allow you to kind of crash or to hide or to play it small or to, go into depression or to just, not speak up, you want to challenge that. Why? Recognize where the fear is in there and begin to start to negotiate with those thoughts and feelings so we can reason with the perception and so we can change the way we look at things. Wayne Dyer always said, change the way you look at things, the things you look at changes. Change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that is so truth, and that's the power of perception. The other thing I say here is where your attention goes, energy flows, right? So if your attention is on the obstacle, on the pain, on the suffering, guess what? That's it. If your attention there, that's where your energy is going to go. We want to be able to shift beyond that. Okay, so Shannon had a question real quick. Let me answer these before I move on to number 5. It says, how do you move from the thoughts? So what I think you mean by that, Shannon, so how do you move from on from your thoughts is that you really don't move on from them. You need to change them. You need to reframe them. So what I mean by that is like we often take our thoughts as truth. We often take what we think about as like kind of just like this is what I think about. Well, your thoughts are fleeting, meaning that you don't have to think that way. And so when you begin to have these thoughts, you can begin to ask yourself, well, what part of the way I'm thinking isn't fair or isn't true or isn't reasonable, or what's another way that I can think about this? And you begin to kind of stretch your mindfulness muscles, okay? I mean, emotional intelligence is really just flexing those mindful muscles. And when you begin to really work them out and to come up with other ways to think about things, then it's going to allow you to move on from those thoughts. Does that make sense? Like, you really have to start to begin to reason with the way you think and not allow your thoughts to be absolute truth. All right, the next question was, oh, wonderful. You're welcome. What about accepting everyone unconditionally? Oh, okay. So I'm going to start with that before I move. Well, it says, I am seriously passionate about people. I'm aware that everyone has a story. I don't judge anyone, but that acceptance and willingness to learn and reason for everyone's actions and behavior has caused me to lose myself a little bit in everyone else. Well, that's two different things, okay? That's two different parts here. The first part is that accepting everyone unconditionally, I mean, I believe that everyone has a blank slate until proven otherwise. So I'm with you on this one, Anne, right? Is that I accept people unconditional. Well, I don't know. I'm going to correct that. I have conditions, okay? Like you and me, and I think we need to be real about this, is that I will accept you, but if you walked up to me and smacked me in the face, you and I got issues, right? Like, I have a condition, all right, that there is conditions, you know, of behavior and conduct that is acceptable and unacceptable, okay? So we have to recognize that there are conditions with our friendships and our interactions with people, right? We forget about that because we just assume that everybody's going to follow these rules. Well, not everyone's going to follow the rules, right? So we do have conditions, and the conditions aren't a bad thing. But what we want to begin to do is to recognize where is that we want to be accepting of others, right? But not necessarily unconditionally. Or you can accept people and not have them in your life, right? So conditions aren't necessarily a bad thing. And I might be going against like every like power guru in the world that says, no, you must love unconditionally. I'm like, okay, sure. Like you're going to love unconditionally if somebody's constantly abusing you. Yes, no. That's where we need boundaries, right? That's where we need to have separation. That's where we need to assert, assert our voice, assert our needs, and be able to, hold people accountable, because I can accept you for being dysfunctional and still put you in jail for being a dysfunctional person. Does that make sense? So there are still conditions that are there. The other half of that, though, is where you're saying is my willingness. So is where you lose yourself a bit. Well, that is because you need to connect with your worth. That's a little bit different. Okay. Where if you know your self-worth and you know your value and you know who you are, you're not going to lose yourself in other people that you're accepting unconditionally. So that's a little bit different than accepting. All right, so last one, Crystal said, how do you authentically move from a hurtful past with someone, like my in-laws, ooh, yes, but you don't want to be friends with or have your boundaries crossed again? Okay, Crystal, so this is a full other topic, okay, that we're going to have to put in a full other different video here. And maybe we can dedicate this last one to having a functional relationship with dysfunctional people. Okay, like, so we have one more this month we're doing next week, and maybe I'll just do that just for you, okay, because this is a whole nother conversation. And I want you to go back and watch the boundaries video, because I think that is really important. But when it comes to how do you deal with dysfunctional people who are constantly going to violate your boundaries or constantly going to hurt you, is that there is a level of releasing expectation and moving into acceptance that that's the best that that person can offer. And if you choose to continue to have a relationship with them, you have to make a relationship moving forward under the clear awareness that this is the type of behavior that they do. Now, it doesn't mean you can't continue to hold them accountable for that and to assert the boundary for that, but you have to recognize that you can't force anyone to do anything. They have to buy into it. Now, there's a very great way to assert boundaries. Go watch the boundary video from last week to help you be able to do that. However, when it comes to having a functional relationship with very dysfunctional people, it really is about moving into acceptance that they're dysfunctional and moving forward, having a relationship based on those terms. I hope that helps, but I would love to do that next week. All right. Here, I love this one, guys. Okay, so when we're talking about enhancing our emotional resiliency, you need to have a level of a sense of humor, okay? Not Homer, but humor, haha. So a sense of humor means that you just need to be able to laugh at your mistakes. You need to stop taking yourself so seriously. Yes, you. Okay. Stop taking yourself so seriously. Be willing to find fun or fun or enjoyment in how you mess up. I just did something, I can't remember what it was the other day, but it was like, I was teaching a class. That's what it was. I was teaching a class in Fairfield, and I brought the wrong worksheet to go with this thing. And so there was like conflicting information, and I made a running joke about it for the entire hour that we were there. And everybody was just laughing. I was laughing because it's not that serious. But it's very easy when you're the professional standing up in front of, 50 people that are there to learn from you, and you don't have congruent information, for that to become something that could easily make me shrink, or make me want to not go back there, or make me feel embarrassed, or make me feel not worthy, or make me feel stupid. No, you got to recognize it's not that serious. You just made a mistake, and you can make fun of that mistake as long as you're learning and growing, learning and growing, learning and growing, learning and growing. That's the biggest emphasis there. All right. So I love this. I don't care what the other cats think. You're my best friend. Right? We want to recognize that, we just want to stop caring so much about other people's opinions and really start caring about ours. To have emotional resiliency requires you to really start caring about what you care about. A few years ago, I started to, this is my, I say I've just started to let my inner geek flag fly. And what that means is that I've just started publicly talking about how I like Star Wars and Star Trek, and I'm a dork, right? Like, I wake up to the Star Wars theme song every morning. I just told a coach buddy of mine yesterday about that, and he just died laughing. And I don't care if he thinks I'm goofy or dorky or you're not very professional or whatever it is. Like, that's my sense of humor. That's like who I am. And so when you can become really grounded in that, knowing that you're going to maybe face rejection around that, that's okay. Okay? It's okay. So you want to start to get in alignment with that. All right, so I'm going to speed up because I only have a few minutes left and I got a couple more. So community and support. So when it comes to building your resiliency, having a community is going to be really big. And part of that is to ask for advice. One of the biggest components when we fail or make mistakes or have hardships is that we tend to recluse, retreat, or hide, when the exact opposite needs to be true. We need to go to trusted advisors. Now, hear that, trusted advisors, to get advice, to ask, how do I better myself in this? How can I see this differently? We need to stop pretending that we know it all and really take this information and be discerning with it, and figuring out how we want to respond to it. How do we want to overcome this? How do we want to do this differently? But a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, and it requires someone else to shine a light in our dark spots for us to grow. All right, number 7 is that we need to take action. So emotional resiliency requires us not to be thinking about things, that we have to be doing things in the same breath. So is that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I love this, right? So when it comes to like bouncing back up, you need to take action. And that action is like a new step, a resolution. And that resolution could be introverted or extroverted, right? The introverted resolution could be you figuring out, what do I need to do differently within inside of myself? Thoughts and feelings or beliefs, or what do I need to do outside of me so that we don't repeat this? Boundaries, expectations, what? Okay. Take actions towards solutions, that when you're building that resiliency, and again, solutions can be introverted or extroverted, but without action, you're going to repeat. And then actively problem solve versus getting stuck on the failure. All right. Actively problem solve. I've been talking about this the whole time. We got to accept that you made the mistake, accept that this person hurt you, accept whatever it is, and then be able to move forward from it. And lastly, number 8 is actually a healthy dose of optimism. Another word for optimism is a healthy dose of faith. And faith, it doesn't have to be religious. What I mean by that is you can have faith in your abilities, your capabilities. You can have faith in the situation. You can have faith in your team. You can have faith in your spouse. You can have faith in other things, right? But you need to have a healthy dose of optimism to be resilient, because we oftentimes want all the answers. We want solutions. We want to know how this is going to turn out, or how I make this perfect. And as I mentioned earlier, that you're not going to know. Success is a combination of millions of failures with minor breakthroughs. millions of failures with minor breakthroughs. You have to be optimistic that the breakthroughs will come through the failures. And when you can be optimistic about that, you will truly begin to shine and rise above. So understanding not everything is completely bad or good is another dose of optimism. Now, we've all met bad people. We've all had bad situations, but everything isn't completely bad or is not completely good. Now, the reason why I want you to get out of these absolutes is because like life doesn't operate that. When we put someone on a pedestal or we don't put anyone, like we don't give them any credit, what happens is then this person never has an opportunity for redemption, and this person is going to fail you miserably and you're going to feel hurt. We have to recognize that everybody's got a combination of good and bad, including myself, including you. And the bad doesn't mean necessarily like you're a bad person. It just means maybe you're really bad with your health, right? Like, or you're really bad with taking your vitamins, or you're really bad with, exercising. There's elements of not so good inside all of us, but not to moving it to the extreme that I suck at this. When we start to really connect to that absolute, like I'm bad at this, like with such an emphasis, you need to move it over a little bit and recognize that that's just a bad choice, or that's just a choice that you haven't put energy in changing. Expect hardship, but don't choose to focus on it. So that's another part of optimism. Like people call me the eternal optimist. And what they mean by that is that they say like, oh, Bonnie, everything's always good to you. And I say, well, no, I recognize that there's bad. I recognize the potential for failure, and I choose not to put my energy in that. So faith that you have the capability of overcoming this. This is so important, you guys, when it comes to being more optimistic, is that we have to begin to, we use our optimism to help us become more resilient, but you need to be aware of the dangers as well. So it's really that combination of that awareness and your experiences, but not allowing those past mistakes to hinder your success and your growth. So hopefully that has helped a little bit today. So resiliency, again, is just your ability to bounce back, and your ability to bounce back depends on your mindset. If you're committed to changing the way that you think and feel, if you're committed to changing the way that you interact and react to different situations, then you need to definitely connect with me. We have our Over It Academy starts. We're in open enrollment right now, and there's a few weeks left. We have 5 spots remaining. If you are interested in joining this year-long program, we are here for you. Like, this is going to entail everything. If you want to learn boundaries and resiliency, if you want to learn forgiveness, if you want to learn how to change the neurofeedback of the brain, then this program is designed for you. You can learn more by going to bonniekelly.me/overit. Again, bonniekelly.me is where you're going to find more information. If you are interested, you all have got this, got to me here through my email. Go back to the email, reply, say, schedule me 20 minutes with Bonnie, and let's sit down and talk. Let's find out where you're limiting yourself, where you're hindering yourself, and how we can begin to get you out of your way. So I am here. I'm so excited that all of you guys have taken advantage of this wonderful hour-long training. Again, next week, we're going to be on board again. I'm going to talk to my team, Crystal, and find out if we got room in the schedule to add the functional relationship with dysfunctional people. I think a lot of you guys will like that. And I'm going to open it up really quick for just 1 or 2 minutes. If one person wants to make a comment or a last-minute question, let's unmute. So everybody's unmuted. Watch out for your background noises. Hi, guys.
Hey.
All right. Anybody have a comment or question?
I want to say thanks for the training.
Oh, Shannon, you're most welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Awesome. Anyone else?
Nope.
Okay. Well, that was it. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Have a great day. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.